Hi everybody, this is Wasim here with Work with Wasim. I hope you're all really well. So my last video was all about what startups should do to be successful, and this one is I thought I'd go the other way and talk about some of the things, some of the traits that make startups not successful. So this video is going to be all about that. Here we go. So the first thing is solving a problem that you don't really care about. This is something which is obvious, and it relates to motivation. The Naval Ravikant said, "Failure happens not when you run out of money, but when you run out of motivation." And people run out of motivation when they don't love a product. Motivation is very, very key. You have to be interested in the widget. Now, this concept of widgets is also very, very interesting because um, it's the thing that you work on. So I've worked in industries from health to retail to automotive, and I can tell you that the times I've been most motivated and most interested in the work that I'm doing is when I did stuff like automotive cars, which I'm really interested in. It's very cool. You know, there's Bentleys, there's Porsches, there's all these really cool cars, and I'm like, wow, I want to be I want to know about this. I'm interested in it, and I want to understand what's happening. Now, I suppose this is not fatal. You might come to love the work that you do. You might come to love the problem that you're trying to solve. But it's much easier to get going if the problem that you're trying to solve is one that you already care about. The second reason startups sometimes fail is um, helping users that you don't really care about, and this is all about the niche that you're trying to work in. Now, your product or service needs to service a particular niche. Now, I was recently talking to the CEO of a bank and the bank started up kind of 10-15 years ago, and the guy I was talking to, the ex-CEO, he was telling me that one of the key things he did straight up front was find out the niche that he cared about. Now, he knew that he could service one particular type of customer. For instance, doctors. They had money. They're well respected. They talk to people, so they are good at kind of transferring across the good points of the bank and the services that the bank will deliver. So he said to me, it's very key to make sure that any business, any startup, understands its niche, cares about its niche, and serves to look after that niche. So I think this is a really key point. Next one is a really dangerous one. Danger, danger, Steve, we used to say, and it's all about choosing co-founders that you don't really know well. So there's an old Muslim saying that goes something along the line of, you don't really know someone unless you've traveled with them, you have lived with them, or you've done business with them. So this business element is really good. You need to try and get to know somebody as well as possible. It's always easier to choose friends. I would say personally, stay away from working with family because unless you don't really care about them, of course, it's really important to work with somebody that you can have formal, good relationships with without having to be too personal. Because people feel that they can take advantages of those personal relationships, whereas if the co-founders are people that you know well, maybe a roommate, maybe somebody you lived with, somebody you've worked with, somebody you've been at university with, there's a natural affinity there, and you can have open, honest conversations, and that's really important. But not knowing somebody at all is a big danger, and you don't know if you can trust them, and you don't know really how good they are unless you get to know them well. Following on from that last one, I think the idea of transparent conversations with a co-founder are key. There's a book called Radical Candor, which is really really worth having a look. But you have to be open and honest in every aspect of the relationship between co-founders. And some of the things that sometimes come up and are problematic with co-founders, things like performance. I feel like I'm performing really well. I don't feel like you're performing at the same level. You're not working as hard as me. Your goals are different. I want to become a billionaire. You want to become, something else, or you're in it for the community, or I'm in it for the community, and you're in it just for the money. Whose job is what? This is something which can be so muddied. I've worked in small startups where there's only 5 or 6 people, and everybody's kind of doing everything, and there's lots of stepping on one another's toes if you're not careful. It's really important to have those conversations really early. I'm doing this. I want to do this. I expect this. My definition of hard work is this. Those sorts of conversations are really good to happen really early to ensure that you don't get into this kind of model. The next one's a really key one: not launching. So many startups just fail to get going because they don't launch. Just launch, go, get it done quickly, quickly, quickly. Get your MVP out, understand what it is, and get it into your customers' hands as quick as possible. There's no such thing as a launch, especially for product-based, software type startups. When did Facebook launch? Do you remember the big launch? Was there a big ceremony? No. When did Google launch? When did TikTok launch? When did Twitter or Instagram launch? We don't remember any of these events because they don't matter. Especially in the startup world, get going quickly, build your product quickly, get it in the hand of your customers as quick as possible, and understand what they think of your product. Now, this is a little bit more difficult in the regulated world of fintech. That's understandable. Even then, though, get yourself regulated, get your MVP, get it out, and start to understand what your customers want from that MVP. Number 6 is not using analytics. So the last point I made was get your MVP into the hands of your customers. But unless you're really using analytics, understanding who your customers are, how they're using your product, you won't understand how to improve it and how to make it better and how to move it forward. So an absolute vital thing to do is use analytics constantly. Work out what your KPIs are, what you need to measure, and work out what actions you need to do to meet those KPIs. Once you have that, then you can start to do, I've done this action, how's it affected the need, or how's it affected the KPI? And if it hasn't, then either your KPIs are not quite lined up correctly, or your actions are not quite lined up properly. So this is very, very key. I'm a huge believer in KPIs and metrics. Make sure you get your metrics right, measure and reassess regularly. Number 7, not knowing where your first user is going to come from. This one's really weird. I don't understand this at all. So people will come and say, oh, I don't know where my first user is going to come from. And I think the answer to that is you chose the problem. You chose a problem to solve. But if you chose a problem to solve that you don't know anybody who's got that problem, that probably wasn't the best problem to try and solve. So I think it's really important to say, to know who has the problems. Are there siblings? Are there friends? Are there family? Are there cousins? Are there women in your family? Are there men in your family? Are there older people in your family? Are there younger people that you know? There's somebody who has to have a specific problem that you can point at and say that person's got this problem. That person or that group is going to be your first users, hopefully. And if you don't have that, then you've probably chosen the wrong question. Stop. I wouldn't go any further. I think a better question might be, how do I get my first 1,000 users? Right, that's a whole different thing and a much better question. So I think that's probably the question you should be asked. But not knowing where your first users are going to come from, that's a problem that is might be fatal to your startup. Very finally, the last point I'm going to make is poor prioritization. So often startups will get involved in lots of different things that don't really matter. 2 things matter, really only 2 things matter. Your problem and how you're going to solve it, right? And once you've solved that problem, how are you going to get it into your customers' hands, right? And then once you've got it into your customers' hands, how do you scale? So how do you monetize, right? So things like we need office space, or we need some sort of fancy design, or we need a fancy launch, or we need all of these other superfluous things. They don't matter. All that matters is your product and your customer. Those are the only things that matter. Get your MVP, get it into the customer's hands. Don't worry about anything else. It's really important. And finally, I just want to say there are caveats to all of those things, right? So there are successful startups who made all of those mistakes and are still successful. Actually, there are probably startups that literally have made every single one of those mistakes and are still successful. But then there's a level of luck there, I think. And if you want to take out that luck, here are some of the things that you can do to ensure that you have a successful startup. So hopefully you found that really useful. If you have, please comment. Tell me some of the other examples that you might have seen of customers startups doing things that are obvious mistakes. And subscribe. And as I said, please comment. Thank you. This has been Work with Wasim. Thank you very much.